What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of 4 Dummies, and tonight I am joined with the other 3 dummies. I have Mrs. Skullface.
Hello.
Mr. Just One.
Yo, what's happening?
And Mr. Robert D. Toff.
Hello.
And tonight we are going to address a topic that was received via a comment on YouTube. So please leave your comments on YouTube so that we can perhaps address a future topic. With that being said, if you want the uncut version of this, please subscribe to Patreon at the $5 level where you can get this as well as Sit Down Saturday and other stuff. And you can hear me lament about the woes of creating content in 2024. But he wrote in, he said, hey, what if some of this collecting rut is itself a symptom of growth and healing? If parts of the collecting impulse is a trauma response that you no longer have to indulge. Yeah. I think we can expand it to just be like, hey, is there any psychological benefit to it in general?
That's interesting to me. Like, I've never looked at, like, do I have this urge to collect these things because of, like, some unhealed wound, you know what I mean, that I have, which is fascinating to me, and I've never thought about it like that.
So can I talk to you guys about a specific issue that I had collecting-wise as a kid?
Yeah.
And I could talk about plenty, but I had a fair amount of Star Wars 3 3/4 figures. And
I know this one.
And my cousin had handed them down to me, my cousin Eric, and he handed down all of this stuff from his childhood to me. And that was my Star Wars figures growing up. I didn't have, like, my dad didn't buy me Star Wars figures for a long time because I had this huge collection of Star Wars figures that was passed on to me. And I was at my mother's house. I had tons of issues with my mother. You can tune into Nerd Rage or Wine and Cheese for that. My mother moved into her first single family house, which I can assure you was a big deal for us. And in this single family house, she had a sandbox out back set up for me. And she was like, I got you a sandbox. And I was like, holy shit. A sandbox. And I took all of my Star Wars figures. My dad let me take figures over to her house for the weekend. And I took all my Star Wars figures out to this sandbox and I built a Sarlacc pit. And I built a little bridge with sand across it to be like the barge that they were on. And I set all my Star Wars figures up on top of it and they were fighting and then ones would fall into the pit, et cetera, et cetera. Well, this kid that lived behind my mother, his name was Fred. Shout out to Fred. I'm sure he's doing fine. But he came down and he was like, hey, I'm making a club. You want to be a part of it? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And we went down the street, right? And I left the sandbox uncovered, Star Wars figures around the sandbox, Star Wars figures in the sandbox, and my mother came out with a trash bag, threw away all the sand, all my Star Wars figures, and put the thing back on the top of it and said, you didn't know how to take care of your stuff, it's all gone. And I fought for years to try to get that stuff back, going to flea markets with my dad and trying to get every little, but now the stuff's like $20, $30, $40, and my dad's not buying me that. I had to go to like a $1 bin and hopefully find a Luke Skywalker where his hair was all worn off and the lightsaber was gone and the hands were chewed, you know.
Right. And how old were you when this happened? Sorry, not to
I would say 7. I think there's a part of rebuilding that collection, my Star Wars 3 3/4 collection, along with other collections in my house that does smack that in the face for me. That is like you couldn't stop me. I still got it. Do you know what I mean? I think there is an element to that within me.
Of the Star Wars 3 3/4 figures, did that feel like you closed that off whenever you completed that?
So I don't know if I would even say, I'm sure there's some odds and ends that I don't have, but there's no like glaring, like, I mean, I bought this whole HasLab in order to get these 2 characters for my 3 3/4 collection. Like my 3 3/4 collection is dear, is like, it's sacred to me in some way. And I guarantee you it's a direct response to that incident. And that they were the majority of the figures that I played with as a kid because they were all hand-me-downs.
But are you losing your like interest now because, all right, this collection's kind of fleshed out?
So to answer his question, no, because I have, then I look at my Black Series and I'm like, well, you're missing a good bit of these, aren't you? But not that I'm missing them, but they haven't made them.
So I have someone I know who was sent to Al-Anon by his therapist for a girlfriend that was an alcoholic. So he's telling me about this. He's going to Al-Anon. He's learning all about how you can't change people. They have to change themselves.
I don't know what Al-Anon is.
Like the
like a rehab
partner or the family members of somebody that is addicted to something.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Never heard of it.
I was like, who's Al-Anon?
So he's going to these meetings. Mm-hmm. He's learning all about what he can't do and what he can do, blah, blah, blah. So over a certain period of time, he says it just landed for him that he addictively buys housewares. He has like so many that
excessive
that it's like hoarding.
Yeah.
And he's now like packing them up because he's trying to make some room in his house and realizing how insane this and how this is also an addiction, just a different one, like maybe an acceptable one.
Yeah.
And so I do have to ask myself, because you are collecting whatever it is, toys, shoes, clothes, wherever you happen to be, or all of them, music is
manic.
Excessive. Yeah, it is excessive. excessive. So I do have to ask myself, like, is this your addiction? Because there is a lot of addiction in your family, right?
That's true.
So there's my hot take.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that the slowdown in the collecting is a sign of growth. I think it's actually, I guess, may be contributing to some of your discontent, like some of your depression. Like, I'm not getting this new great thing. I'm not like continuing to evolve this thing. Like, this huge, like, constant pleaser addiction is like coming to an end. There's very few and far between things that are coming through that you're truly excited about. Like, yeah, okay, I'm going to get one more of these statues. I'm going to get one more. But like,
for me, it's definitely an addictive component. Like, I think that's probably more of OCD and addictive, and me just kind of having to.
But you were able to quit. Do you see this as a relapse?
No, it's not that. I just think it's not even about like. I think just anything I get into, it's probably similar to you. It's all or nothing. I mean, if I'm going to do it, I do it at 100. Yeah. I have an addictive personality, and it's a compulsion too. Like, I also think a little bit of OCD. So it's not that even though I quit like collecting and got rid of the toy, it doesn't matter. It wasn't I got rid of the toys. I still had other shit that it was going to transfer onto something else.
Yeah. Got you. I know I'm an addict. I'm well aware of that. But like, the only bail I'll throw myself in regard to it is that like, I grew up in the era of collect 'em all. Like, I come from the trenches of collect 'em all. But like most kids, my family did not have money for me to collect them all.
Yeah.
You know, and now I'm at a point where I can collect them all. And now my issue is not that I can't get the thing, is that they're not making the thing for me to get.
Right. Dude, there's something to be said about that when, like, especially if you think about everything, G.I. Joe, Ninja Turtles, I don't know if Transformers did this, but what was on the back of the card? A list of everything that you needed with a little check mark
Transformers
on it.
Definitely did it. So they did it with the art on the back, but then aside from the art on the back, there was little inserts inside that you pulled out and expanded, and they had pictures of everything that was out, and you had a little checklist.
Yeah, and it was like a little checkbox that you could check off, and you're like, yeah, man, I'm telling you, that. Yeah, and that's where thinking about that, like, I could feel my cells coming alive. So there's something in that. So I don't know if it's like that's what started it, or if like I just already had that, and I already had that behavior, and that just grabbed onto it, or if that triggered this behavior.
And I think it transfers over to everything for me. Like, I think it transfers over to media. This Deadpool Wolverine thing, right? Like, I don't have any need for any more Wolverines, but I watched that movie, fell back in love with all of it, and I was like, no, I need something, and I moved my Wolverines from down there to over there so that I can make a little bit more room for a couple more Wolverines or a couple more Deadpool. Like, it's all about having this physical representation of these things that mean something to you, and I don't know how else to describe it.
Like 10 years ago, I quit smoking, and it's interesting because I never saw the correlation. I used to smoke like a pack a day, and when I quit, I didn't see it as a void. I saw it as, oh, now I have more personal time to pursue my interests, and I really started getting into collecting. But now I'm thinking, was it my addictive personality latching onto something new? But it's interesting. I still have those moments. Like right now, I'm looking at a 1-to-1 scale Sword of Omens that's still in the box against my wall.
Yes, you do.
And I'm like, I remember when I saw it, I'm like, why not? Why can't I get that? I want that. I would have loved to have had that as a kid. Yep. And it's that voice that is like, no, you can get it now. You have that freedom.
Yeah. I think the freedom is something too. I think the freedom is tied to it also. But I think like, and I still like to this day with my 3 3/4 collection specifically, and still when I see them, like, I'm quicker to pick up a 3 3/4 figure that fell off that shelf and put it back on than I am for something that falls off here.
Yeah, you're awful about it.
I'm awful about it here. But in there, I'm quick to do it. And I think because every time I put that figure back on that shelf in there and I take a step back and I look at it, I think to myself, I did it.
Well, you took care of your things.
Oh, you, dude.
You know what I mean? Think about that, dude. You took care of your thing, man. That's what I thought about. You picked it up, and
Mama always said,
yeah, dude. No.
Mama always said, clean up your sandbox.
But especially those specifically, because you know what I mean? There's something to think about there.
Yeah, you're right. You're not wrong. So I think that his question raises a lot of interesting questions to contemplate, but I ultimately think the answer to his question is no. Like the answer to his question is no.
Right.
I'm not healing, and that's why I'm finding myself in a rut. But is there something to why I am collecting that is helping me heal? I think is a more interesting question.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's one aspect of collecting that is extremely beneficial that we're not talking about. That has a significant impact, at least on my interest in collecting. And it's the community. It's not just buying toys, right? Yeah. When I say I'm a collector, it's like it means I collect things and I'm part of a collecting community. And that aspect has benefited my life.
Oh, 100%.
Tremendously.
I'll go out and say, like, the large majority of my closest friends that I have today, I wouldn't have without collecting. And it also begs the question, right? Like, I've met a lot of friends. I've met a lot of people that I consider people that have broke bread at my house, people that, people that I really connect with. And if I get out of it tomorrow, right? I stop making videos tomorrow. I stop buying tomorrow. I stop giving about it all tomorrow. What happens to those relationships? Do they continue? Maybe. I'd like to think so, but how do I know?
Yeah, right. Well, some of them will, some of them won't. I think that's just the nature of everything.
So I think that there's another element to it too, though, right? Like, because there is, like, I think a lot of people that get into this and wear it like a badge of honor in some way, it comes from some feeling of being ostracized.
Oh, yeah.
Not that it comes from, but that the feeling of being ostracized is in some way tied to it. And in the community element of it, if you really dig your heels in, you do find a place to belong, right? Like you do find camaraderie, you do find common interests and friendships with maybe a lowercase f, but you do find these connection points. And to give that up is to give away maybe something you've been chasing the whole time.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that has always really impressed me about our collecting community, this community is a cabal. We are all over the world, from all walks of life, from all perspectives and backgrounds. And I mean, it's wonderful. But
I think in the same breath, like, I think about the amount of content that I make with people from the community that, like, I think has meaning. Like I make, like we do Dummies twice a month, and I think that Dummies has meaning. It means something to people. It means something to the community. It means something to the space, right? And then, Nerd Rage, Shop Talk with Sam, and like there's so many different people that I've been able to connect with and make something meaningful from that space, So I think to answer his question, the short answer of what if some of this collecting rut is itself a symptom of growth and healing, and part of the collecting impulse is a trauma response that you no longer have to indulge. I think the answer to that is no in some way, because it's not tied to the rut. But I think in the other way, that while it is an addiction and it is a kind of a bankroll drainer, and it is the emotional traumas of the ups and downs of reveals and when is dead end gonna come out and all that kind of stuff, while it is all of those things, it is also simultaneously this element of healing and just positive energy into your life if you allow it. These other positive elements to come out of it that maybe aren't necessarily specifically tied to this question in a way, but perhaps lie a layer deeper.
Box of tissues.
Tree trimmer.
I got a sandbox.
Sea shed.
Oh, yeah.
She said, Mommy Dearest. Your mom. Mommy Dearest movie.
Some hangers.
We actually just had a long conversation about Mommy Dearest recently.
I was obsessed with that movie growing up. Yeah. Obsessed.